So the triathlon itself, let's break down all the stats. Iron distance triathlon, 3.8k swim, 180 kilometer bike and run. Water temperature, do you know? 1 degree, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Celsius?
-1 degree because of the salt
Minus one
content.
degree. Fantastic. Brilliant. Brilliant. That, yeah, I didn't account for the salt content in my calculation there. That is cold. Oh,
Yeah.
good Lord. And yeah, my irrational fear of sea creatures would suddenly become quite rational, I think, with Antarctica's wildlife. And the bike elevation total, because it's quite hilly, Antarctica, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was relatively flat, like the section that we picked. So what I don't know if people know, but I did a 200-meter loop 900 times. So
And I knew it was loops. I didn't actually know it was that small.
yeah,
Oh God,
so
circles. Was it
insane.
like an athletics track? Just
No, it's kind of like a pin. There's like one line with a pin turn loop, and then back, and then same thing, and it's just like in the shape of like a dumbbell or something. And it's just I don't even know, man. I was 21 hours on the bike. But yeah, to break it down, the swim 3 point. We did 3 point. I did 3.9 kilometers. It was about a 600-meter stretch in this cove, and there's just like seals or sea lions just around the cove. And as I'm swimming, we had a boat beside me, a little Zodiac boat, inflatable boat, and it would go back and forth because there was a seal following me. They're not like particularly aggressive, but they're just curious. But still, they're bigger than me, right? And I'm
yeah.
like a pretty big guy, so it's like it's scary when you're in the water and these things come up near you. You can feel their presence. But the swim took me an hour and 43 minutes, which is 43 minutes longer than my other Ironman time, like my best Ironman swim time, just because it was so cold. My muscles were freezing, my teeth froze. Like I went hypothermic afterwards. It was scary.
Was it just black? But like, was it pitch black beneath you, or was there any color coming through from the ice? So I can just imagine that part of the world being as barren and cold and exposed as it is. That water must be terrifying.
Yeah, it was like a dark blue, but yeah, you could see, maybe a meter of depth beneath you and then just kind of black and there's just ice and snow. And I mean, where I was in Deception Island, it's an actual volcano island. So it's mostly ash. And it's like an old whaler's bay. But yeah, just so desolate. There's nothing around you other than animals and the boat.
Unbelievable in many ways. Like, we're talking about a triathlon here, which is kind of why I asked at the start if you actually managed to get yourself into realizing what you were doing, because I can imagine you want to be able to just view this as, I'm doing a triathlon, simple as that. Let's break it down so I can get through this. But it's in Antarctica, somewhere that most of the world will never visit, experience, or even really necessarily understand, and you're doing a 9 distance triathlon through it, which is just crazy. So my own selfish fascination with this is huge, which is, I mean, the water terrifies me, just
Yeah.
terrifies me, because I'm irrational at the best of times. Sometimes, whenever I start open water swim season, I have my moments, and then I settle into it after a few sessions. But whenever I go out and can't see the bottom, my mind plays tricks on me. Even in Scotland, where there is very little wildlife to be of any risk, but my brain tells me otherwise. So, out of the water, how long did it take you to get back to the sort of competence physically to be able to get on the bike?
Just over 30 minutes. So it was practically like hypothermic coming out. Like my body was just in shock, and uncontrollably shaking. And there's this moment, like honestly, I'll never forget. Is my brother like jumped on my body and put his hands, in my hands on his bare skin, to like warm them up. And like the team put my feet in warm water, got like all these warm blankets and jackets around me. And I was just like uncontrollably shaking. And honestly, I was pretty scared at that point because like I've experienced, after drop and cold training kind of swims, but I've never experienced my body in like that state before. Um, And yeah, they just tried to give me like soup and warm liquids just to kind of warm myself up. But I knew like I need to start moving or it's just going to get worse. So just
Yep.
kind of like told them like, let's go like as fast as possible, get me back on this bike. And took about 30 minutes in that transition just to like warm my body back up and change into my bike gear and then start the bike ride.
I can't imagine your bike gear was a sexy pair of Rafa bib shorts either, was it? I can imagine it was a little bit more comprehensive than that this time round. So, mountain bike, fat tires, and covered head to toe. What parts of your body were exposed? I know your face was exposed in the swim around basically. Am I right in saying your cheeks and a little bit your forehead? Was that about it?
Yeah, just under my eyes, above my mouth. My nose was completely covered.
Yep.
So just for your mouth, and we had this like this cream that we put on that's supposed to like prevent frostbite from direct water on the skin. And then yeah, the bike, everything was covered, and except I had like a buff and
Yep.
just glasses. So yeah, it was 30 or 20, 21 hours on the bike. Ended up doing a 200-meter loop. And the original plan is the day before I try to map out the best course possible. And it was like about a 1 kilometer loop. So I knew it was going to be a long time and a lot of loops. But after the first like 1 kilometer I loop, I realized like the sand or the ground was just way too soft. Like I could barely pedal. I was just like almost falling over. I was just like, we gotta get smarter here. So I found like a little portion. It was like 100-meter section that was like a firmer from the glacier runoff, like dried up, firmer glacier runoff. And it's essentially like, okay, I'm going to just do this back and forth. We'll set up our aid stations because I'm going to be going through the night. I already know it. And that was like just the audible I called during the actual race. It was just like, okay, let's just adapt and we'll have our stations for food. And my goal in my brain was like, break it down every 10K. I'm going to get off and drink water and refuel and then keep going.
GPS, assuming it was the main metric that you were using, just to keep on top of everything, because I can imagine getting a yardstick was probably off the table. So, how did you have live data, or were you relying on others?
We had like a live GPS tracker for the swim.
So, at what point on the bike did you realize just how long this was going to take? And obviously they've had your estimations ahead of time, and if you're working to a 1K loop, I can imagine your estimations were a little bit more generous than it turned out to be. So what did you factor for in terms of time on bike versus what it turned out to be? And when did the realization come?
Yeah, I think in my brain I thought I could do it in like 15 to 16 hours, which is a long time. But I knew it was going to be slow. But I was like, you know, I don't even know, 12 hours in, and I was like, oh man, like I'm like just over halfway here. Like this is going to be horrible. And then like as the night goes in and gets colder, it gets pitch black. It's just like, what do you even think about? It was like, what do you even think about for that amount of time? So I just kind of realized like we just got to break it down into chunks and celebrate the small wins and create a system that will work for me and make sure that the crew knows that. And I'm a big, coffee drinker, and I was like, I need I need coffee at like X amount of time, and but there was moments where like you're reliant on your crew, but there was moments where like my crew was fast asleep because they were just like up for so long. I had my brother and my buddy Innes, who's like the filmmaker and capturing all of this. And it was like in the middle of the night. I've been up for 20 something hours now, and we had these two lit like beacons on each side, and one of them went out, and I couldn't see anything. And I'm like yelling, I'm like, guys, I can't see, and they like run over, like they waking up from their nap, and I'm just like, guys, we gotta be on it. And I mean, there's no shade. I'm forever grateful for them, and I couldn't have done it without them. But there's these things like where you're just so dialed in that you can't think about your food and if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
gonna have your food there, right? And it needs to be a real team effort.
Yeah, yeah, which is ultimately part of the experience, and that's what makes things like this so valuable. When it's not a race, when you
Yeah.
dream it up, the process and the actual execution becomes so much more valuable because you've created the whole thing. What's nose to tail? It's kind of the equivalent, isn't it? So, bike. How did you feel coming off it?
Oh man. I mean, you've been in an Ironman race and your legs are jello. My legs were just locked. So my left leg, and even right now, it's still recovering from it, was just locked. The joints were like completely locked, so stiff. Never had that before, where it was like you can barely bend your leg. And I was so exhausted. I just like sat down for 20 minutes. I was like, I just need to like power nap here and refuel. And I thought they were joking when they woke me up again. I was like, what do you mean? I just sat down. Like my brain just like was like, you blinked and they were like, it's time to go. You gotta go. I was like, I just sat down. Like I need to sleep. They're like, no, you gotta go. So it was just this weird like moment of you're like an out of body experience, right? You've reached this state of just pain and euphoria, and like in the same breath I knew that I was 42 kilometers away from a dream I've had for 4 years. So i was uh I was just like overwhelmed.
How did you feel once you got moving? Did you have the usual triathlon transition experience? I already know the answer to this, I assume. The usual triathlon transition experience of a couple of strides, 500 meters, 1K. Right, I'm in my rhythm now. Everything's good. What was I thinking in transition? I feel great. Or was it just torture the whole way through?
It's just torture. I just like, it's like my leg was completely locked. It just couldn't even use my left knee. And I was like, okay, start walking, just get into it. And then eventually I created this structure in my brain, and it was the same loop. So it was like even more insane. I just biked this loop for 900. Now I got to freaking run it. It was like, okay, I'll walk 100 meters and then try and jog back 100 meters. And that was my system for essentially 30K of the run. And then I was like, all right, fuck it. I need to start changing this up. I'm going to lose my mind, and started running like around the perimeter, kind of along the shoreline. There's a bit of elevation, but I was just like, I don't even care. Like
Yeah.
I'll do it just to change my mindset. Um, yeah.